Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Naam, inshallah, we'll continue with translating the book Tahdhib al-Tahdhib by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the year 852 after the Hijrah. And Ibn Hajar, we're in the beginning of the book where he's mentioning those who their name begins with a Hamza or Harf Alif, which in reality is the Hamza. And he started off with those who their name is Ahmed. And we started off with those who their name was Ahmed ibn Ibrahim. Those who their name in alphabetical order was Ahmed ibn Ibrahim. And if we didn't benefit anything from the last reading, what we did benefit is that there are only 5 people in Al-Kutub al-Sitta named Ahmed ibn Ibrahim. 2 of them are only with Nasa'i. And in reality, only one of them is with Nasa'i. And that is Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Bukair ibn Bakar. Naam, Muhammad ibn Bakar. Naam. Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Bakar ibn Malik ibn Abdul Malik ibn al-Walid ibn Busr ibn Abi Arta al-Amiri Abu Abdul Malik al-Busri al-Damashqi. That's the only one that's with Nasa'i. As far as 2 of the other ones, then al-Mawsili, Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Khalid, then he can be found with Abu Dawood. And as far as the other one, then that is the more prominent one, Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Kathir ibn Zayd al-Dawraqi, then he can be found with Muslim and Abu Dawood and at-Tirmidhi as well as Ibn Majah. And as far as the 5th one, because we mentioned the other one was with Nasa'i, but in the Musnad Imam Malik of Nasa'i. As far as the last one, Ahmed ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi, then this is not really a person. This is instead a mistake from al-Maqdisi in the original book, Al-Kamal. He called this individual Ahmed ibn Ibrahim, and he said that this person's hadith was with Abu Dawood, but in reality, it was Ibrahim ibn Muhammad at-Taymi, who his hadith are with Abu Dawood and others, and we'll talk about him when we get there. So those were the first 5 people, and those are the only 5 people named Ahmed ibn Ibrahim in Al-Kutub al-Sitta, right? Only one of them is in more than one book, which is Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Kathir ibn Zayd ad-Dawraqi, who died in the year 240. Yeah, 240. And then you have another one with Abu Dawood, which is Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Khalid al-Mawsili, who died in the year 236. And then you have another one with Nasa'i, who died in the year 289. Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Bakar ibn Abdul Malik ibn al-Walid ibn Busr ibn Abi Arta al-Amiri al-Busri al-Damashqi. So those are the only real 3 in Kutub al-Sitta. As far as the 4th one, Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Fil al-Balisi Nazil al-Antakiya, who died in the year 284, then he's only in Musnad Muwatta of al-Nasa'i. So those are the first 5 people that we've covered. The next individual, number 6 in our book, Tahdhib al-Tahdhib by Ibn Hajar, will be, and this is one of the things that I encourage to do. Take 5, right? Like, these books are meant to be read and committed and, preserved like a dictionary. And the more you come across them, the more these names will ring out. Give yourself certain mnemonic tricks to help you preserve some of these individuals. If nothing else, right? I know that one of them, if I'm looking in Muslim, there's only one Ahmed ibn Ibrahim in all of Sahih Muslim. There's only one Ahmed ibn Ibrahim in all of Tirmidhi. There's only one Ahmed ibn Ibrahim in all of Ibn Majah, besides his tafsir. There's only one Ahmed ibn Ibrahim in all of Tirmidhi. There's 2 Ahmed ibn Ibrahims in all of Abi Dawood. And there's one Ahmed ibn Ibrahim in all of Nasa'i, but he's a different Ahmed Ibrahim, right? And so helping that or doing that will help you memorize these people. Here he mentions number 6, and this is Ahmad ibn al-Azhar. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar. And he mentions this person, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim al-Abdi, Abu al-Azhar al-Naysaburi. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim al-Abdi, Abu al-Azhar al-Naysaburi. His hadith can be found with An-Nasa'i as well as Ibn Majah. His hadith can be found with An-Nasa'i as well as Ibn Majah. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim al-Abdi, with a fatha on the ain and a sukoon on the letter with one dot underneath. And at the end of it, there is a dal, al-Abdi. And this is an attributing to the tribe of Abdul Qais, who was a branch of Rabi'a ibn Nizar. So this tribe, al-Abdi, goes back to Rabi'a ibn Nizar. So they meet up in Nizar ibn Ma'ad ibn Adnan. And this attributing to this individual, you could either call the person Abdi or Abqasi. You can say about a person, sometimes these affiliations, these attributings, they can be given different versions. You can say Al-Abdi, i.e. from the tribe of Abdi Qais ibn Rabi'a, or Abdi Qais from the tribe of Rabi'a ibn Nizar, or you can say Abqasi, right, from the tribe of Abdul Qais, or Abdul Qais. And so Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim al-Abdi, his kunya was Abu al-Azhar. And he was from Naysabur. And we all know Naysabur is that area that was shared between Iran and Afghanistan. So he was an original Arab, but he was also from that region of the land. They say Rawa an Abdullah ibn Numair and Rawh ibn Ubadah and Yaqub ibn Ibrahim and Sa'id and Abdul Razaq. I'm sorry, وعن Yaqub ibn Ibrahim ibn Sa'd and Abdul Razaq and Adam ibn Abi Iyas and Al-Haytham ibn Jamil and Abu Asim al-Nabil and Abi Salih Katibul Layth wa Jama'ah. From his teachers was Abdullah ibn Numair and Rawh ibn Ubadah, right? These names, remember, he's mentioning them because these are names that are famous. Abdullah ibn Numair, you're going to hear about him a lot in hadith. Rawh ibn Ubadah, Yaqub ibn Ibrahim ibn Sa'd, Abdul Razaq, yani as-San'ani, Adam ibn Abi Iyas, Al-Haytham ibn Jamil, Abu Asim al-Nabil, Abu Salih, the one who used to write for Layth, as well as others. And from his students were An-Nasa'i and Ibn Majah and Al-Dhuhli, and Muhammad ibn Faris Al-Dhuhli. وَهُوَ مِنْ أَقْرَانِهِ, and he was also from his contemporaries, his classmates, as well as Al-Bukhari and Muslim outside of the Sahih, right? He narrated, Muslim narrated on him in other than Sahih Muslim, in other books. Likewise, Bukhari narrated on him in other books. He says, وَالدَّارِمِ وَأَبُو زُرْعَةَ الرَّازِي وَأَبُو عَوَانَةَ الإسفرايني ومحمد ابن جرير الطبري وأبو حامد الشرقي وآخرون. So this individual, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, was a scholar. We see it from his teachers and we see it in his students. Nasa'i and Ibn Majah and Al-Dhuhli, Muhammad ibn Yahya ibn Faris Al-Dhuhli, as well as Bukhari and Muslim, Ad-Darimi, Abu Zur'a, Abu Awana, Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Not only do we see he was a scholar, we see he was long-lived, right? But we'll see more about that in a second. So these were some of his students. Ibn Hajar, he says, قال ابن الشرقي سمعت أبا الأزهر يقول كتب عني يحيى بن يحيى. Abu al-Azhar, Ibn al-Sharqi, he said, I heard Abu al-Azhar saying, Yahya ibn Yahya wrote from me. He wrote some of my statements down. Yahya ibn Yahya here, he means at-Tamimi, one of those who narrated the Muwatta, right? Yahya ibn Yahya at-Tamimi and Naysaburi Abu Zakaria. He was a companion of Imam Malik. And so Yahya ibn Yahya at-Tamimi would have been one of his teachers, or from the level of one of his teachers. And in spite of that, he wrote some of his hadith down. He learned from him. And so this is a prestige when a student says, one of my teachers, took from me. And so Ash-Sharqi, he said that I heard Abu al-Azhar saying that Yahya ibn Yahya wrote from me, right? He wrote down some of my information. Al-Hakim Abu Ahmad, and this is not Al-Hakim, this is not Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi. This is a different one. Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi is Abu Abdullah. And so it's important that when you see names that you know who the different ones are, because Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi was not the first person named Al-Hakim or given that nickname Al-Hakim. And so they say here, Al-Hakim Abu Ahmad, he said, ما حدث من أصل كتابه فهو أصح قال وكان قد كبر فربما يلقن. Al-Hakim Abu Ahmad, he said about this individual, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Muhammad ibn Ibrahim, ibn Mani' ibn Salit ibn Ibrahim. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, forgot it that quick. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar ibn Mani' ibn Salit ibn Ibrahim Abu al-Azhar. Al-Hakim Abu Ahmad, he said about him, whatever he narrates from his original book, then it is more authentic. And he grew old. And so maybe some people would suggest to him what to say. Right? And we see this. We see the detail of the people of hadith. Sometimes when the individual would get old, somebody might write something in his book that wasn't from his statements. Or somebody, when it was time to give the class, they would say the hadith to him to get him to approve of it. Instead of, right, they would say a hadith that wasn't his and try to get him to approve of it. And so this type of action is called in Arabic telqeen, like suggesting what should be said. And it was a way of getting a person's hadith demoted or weakened. If a person would accept such an action, that shows that they weren't competent or conscious of their narrations enough to decipher what was and what wasn't, and they would let other people's narrations slip in on them. And so this is called telqeen. Right? You can find this even nowadays sometimes, right? Where, if the teacher's memory is slipping, or if they're not solid, you'll find them, often forgetting the ayat, often forgetting the hadith, and the students will comment, oh, it's this way, it's that way, right? But in the older times, this was something that was unpraiseworthy, that you could be given the hadith, that somebody could give the hadith to you and you were the teacher. And so Al-Hakim Abu Ahmad, he says, whatever he narrates from his book, then this was valid. This was more accurate because he was an individual who got old and he might potentially be allowed to be given the hadith or taught the hadith. They say in the footnotes about this that Abu Ahmad al-Hakim, he said this in his book Al-Asami wal-Kuna. No, that wasn't all that important. Now, they say وقال ابن خراش سمعت محمد بن يحيى يثني عليه. Muhammad ibn Yahya ibn Faris al-Dhuhli was that scholar who was one of the most prominent scholars of his time in hadith and in people. And he was that scholar between him and Imam al-Bukhari. That famous fitna arose. Muhammad ibn Yahya ibn Faris al-Dhuhli and Naysaburi. And Muhammad ibn Yahya, he said about this individual, Ibn Khirash said that Muhammad ibn Yahya said about this individual, Ahmad ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Azhar ibn Mani ibn Salit ibn Ibrahim Abu al-Azhar, he said about him that Muhammad ibn Yahya used to praise this individual. So this was a strong sign of praise of this individual. And remember, he was one of his contemporaries. They say, وَقَالَ أَبُو عَمْرٍ الْمُسْتَمْلِي and Muhammad ibn Yahya أبو الأزهر من أهل الصدق والأمانة نرى أن يكتب عنه. Abu Amr al-Mustamli said about Muhammad ibn Yahya, that same Muhammad ibn Yahya, that he said about that individual, Abu al-Azhar, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, he said that Abu al-Azhar is from the people of honesty and truthfulness or trustworthiness. We see that you should write from him. You should write his statements down. If he gives you a hadith, it's okay to write it down. And that's a strong praise, because if a person was extremely weak, they would tell a person, don't write his statements down. There's no use of even saving it. And this is a principle that we can benefit from today. People who are liars, people who are fabricators and falsifiers of truth, there's no need to preserve their information. Let their information die with the time period they died in. Sometimes you find people say, well, for posterity's sake, for the sake of honesty and information, we want to save the statements of every individual. We only want to preserve the statements of truth. Let the falsehood die in its time period. So we shouldn't give great effort to saving the falsehood of the previous individuals, but instead we should give effort into preserving the truth. And from that is what Muhammad ibn Yahya said about this individual. He is from the people of honesty and trustworthiness. We see it to be okay to write his statements down, or to write down what you get from him. They say, وَقَالَ مَكِّي ibn Abdan سألت مسلم ibn al-Hajjaj and أبي الأزهر فقال اكتب عنه. Mekki ibn Abdan, he said, I asked Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj. Mekki ibn Abdan, he said, I asked Muslim, Imam Muslim, Sahibul Sahih. I asked Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj about Abil Azhar, about this person, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar. And Muslim said about him, you can write what you get down from him. If he gives you a hadith, you can write it down. It's okay to preserve it. وقال الحاكم ولعله هنا الحاكم النيسابوري. Here, it's most likely al-Hakim and Naysaburi, the famous one who wrote al-Mustadrak. He said, هذا رسم مسلم في الثقات. This is how Muslim would address somebody who was extremely reliable and righteous, right? Muslim wouldn't be extra with his praise. He would say, yeah, you can write down what you get from him. فهذا رسم مسلم في الثقات. He wouldn't be extra in the praise that he would give to someone. This is another good quality, right? For us who want to be people of hadith. Like, look at these statements, not just at their surface level, but also for more than that. They don't go overboard when praising somebody. And they don't go overboard often when disparaging somebody, right? If somebody was praiseworthy, they think, yeah, you can write his hadith down. Right? And if somebody was criticizable, no, don't write his hadith down. The people left him. Sakatu, they didn't say nothing about him. Right? You find statements that were harsher than that or more decorative than that. But this is because the people in grading, they were three levels: laxical, extreme, and in the middle. And so here we see an example of somebody in the middle, like Muslim, that even though this person was reliable and righteous, as was mentioned by Muhammad ibn Yahya, Muslim said, yeah, you can write his hadith down. And we're also noticing another theme if you're paying attention. Muhammad ibn Yahya and Naysaburi, Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj and Naysaburi, al-Hakim and Naysaburi, right? These are all scholars from his area, right? So this is another quality, right? That the people of your area, they should know about you. If you are a person of knowledge and a student in your area, right? Oftentimes we think, well, I don't care if anybody here knows about who I am, and I don't want to be known and famous and X, Y, and Z. And yes, we don't do things to show off. But if you're in a city and you're from the people of righteousness in that city, then the people of righteousness in that city should know about you, because you should be servicing your community. Not they should know about you because you show off and you're everywhere that you need to be seen, but that righteousness should be a transitive quality, that the people in your city can see what you're doing, right? I'malu, act. And indeed, Allah will see your action and his messenger as well as those who believe. Naam. They say, وَقَالَ Ibrahim ibn Abi Talib. Ibrahim ibn Abi Talib, he said, كَانَ مِنْ أَحْسَنْ مَشَايِخِنَا حَدِيثًا. Ibrahim ibn Abi Talib, he said that he was from the best of our teachers in hadith. وَقَالَ أَحْمَد ibn Sayyar, حَسَنُ الْحَدِيث. He was good in his hadith. Ahmad ibn Sayyar said that this individual was good in his hadith. وَقَالَ صَالِحُ جَزَرَ صَدُوق. And Salihu Jazara, he said that this individual was righteous. وَقَالَ النَّسَائِ وَالدَّارَقُطْنِي لَا بَأْسَ بِهِ. And then Nasa'i and ad-Daraqutni said there's nothing wrong with him, right? We see now that the levels of praise are coming lower and lower. When he was in Naysabur, the people of Naysabur really talked good about him for the most part, except that one criticism that later on he might have been encouraged to say a hadith or two. And then you see it starting to slip off. Some people said he was righteous. Saduq is less than thiqah. And then you see a Nasa'i who was extreme. Nasa'i was very harsh with his praise. La ba'sa bihi. There's nothing wrong with him. But you have to know this to know how to grade a person. When Nasa'i says la ba'sa bihim, there's nothing wrong with him, that from Nasa'i is a good quality. Likewise, ad-Daraqutni said the same thing. They say, وَقَالَ الدَّارَقُطْنِي قَدْ أُخْرِجَ فِي الصَّحِيحِ عَنْ مَنْ هُوَ دُونَهُ وَشَرًّا مِنْهُ. Ad-Daraqutni, he said, you can find in books that are called Sahih, like Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, right? You can find in books that are Sahih the hadith of people who are less than him, i.e. are at a lesser level than him, and are more evil than him. And so this is praise, right? There's people who we all agree that they're authentic who aren't as good as him. And so if he's better than them, then he must be authentic too. And likewise, they say, وَلَمَّا ذَكَرَ بِنُ الشَّرْقِ بَنَادَرَ الْحَدِيث عَدَّهُ فِيهِمْ. بَنَادَرَةِ الْحَدِيث عَدَّهُ فِيهِمْ. And when Ibn al-Sharqi mentioned the Banadara is the plural of the word bundar. And this term bundar is a nickname that's given to individuals. There's a famous one that we'll come across. And it is the insightful, the perceptive, right? So Ibn al-Sharqi, when he mentioned the perceptive and clever individuals in hadith, he mentioned this individual from them. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Salit, Abu al-Azhar. Abu al-Azhar, where was he from? Don't tell me. Abu al-Naysaburi. Now, he said, وقال أحمد بن يحيى بن زهير التستري لما حدث أبو الأزهر بحديث عبد الرزاق في الفضائل، يعني أن معمر أن الزهري أن عبيد الله أن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال نظر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى علي فقال أنت سيد في الدنيا سيد في الآخرة. الحديث أخبر بذلك يحيى بن معين فبينه وعنده في جماعة من أهل الحديث إذ قال يحيى من هذا الكذاب النيسابوري الذي يحدث عن عبد الرزاق بهذا الحديث؟ فقام أبو الأزهر فقال هو ذا أنا هو. فتبسم يحيى وقال أما إنك لست بكذاب، وتعجب من سلامته وقال الذنب لغيرك في هذا الحديث. الله أكبر. Right, these are the stories that make you smile when you hear about them in the people of hadith. Ahmad ibn Yahya ibn Zuhair at-Tustari was a scholar of hadith. He said when Abu al-Azhar, this individual we're talking about, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, when Abu al-Azhar mentioned a hadith of Abdul Razak as-San'ani. And from the things that you have to know about Abdul Razak as-San'ani is that Rumiya bit Tashayyur, right? He was accused of a small amount of Shi'ism. And Shi'ism early on wasn't what it is today. It wasn't rough. It wasn't to the extent that we see the Rafida, the Imamiyya, the Ithna Ashariya. Those are kuffar. But as far as the early Shia, then they had some views that were outside of the common view, but it wasn't as bad as it is today. And Abdul Razak as-San'ani was accused of some portion of this. And he had a book in which he talked about the virtues of Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and some people had some criticisms about this, right? Was it fabricated? Was it not fabricated? Did he take weak narrations and things like that? And remember, the people of Hadith, their thing wasn't parties and politics. Their thing was, are you saying the Hadith correctly? So when Ahmad al-Azhar, Ahmad Abu al-Azhar narrated this Hadith on behalf of Abdul Razak, on the authority of Abdul Razak, i.e. on the authority of Ma'mar, on the authority of az-Zuhri, on the authority of Ubaydullah, on the authority of Ibn Abbas. Now this chain, when you look at it, it seems solid, right? Besides the possible tadlis that's in it, the chain seems solid. And the chain leads to the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he looked at Ali and he said to him, you are a leader in this dunya and a leader in the hereafter. When Yahya ibn Ma'in, and Yahya ibn Ma'in was one of the nuqad, he was one of the scholars of hadith who was the most knowledgeable of people and like the sternest in grading hadith of his time. When Yahya ibn Ma'in was informed about this, somebody's narrating this hadith, he went around when that person was in a group. So he waited till a group of people got around. Look at the wisdom. A person is narrating the hadith in public. I'm going to refute it in public. Not all the time does the refutation have to be in secrecy. Not all the time does the refutation have to be in private, right? Somebody's narrating this hadith. I want to make sure that the people know this falsehood. And so I'm going to wait till a similar group of people are around to point out the falsehood to make sure that that information is transmitted, right? Learn these little subtle lessons. So Yahya, when he was informed of that, when there was a group of people around him in a group from the people of hadith, and so he didn't just have a group of people, random people, he had a group of people around him from the people of hadith. So that way, if he went too far or if he said something wrong, there would be others there to chime in. And that would give more stability to the information that he's transmitting. Because you can point to, well, so-and-so was there and didn't say anything. And such was there and didn't say anything. And it also takes a bravery to speak in front of people like that. And a knowledge to be allowed and confident enough that what you're saying is the truth when there are other scholars around who can comment on what you're saying. So all of these are subtle lessons. So when Yahya was around a group of people from the people of hadith, Yahya, he said, Man hadha al-kadhab al-Naysaburi? Who is this liar from Naysabur that's telling this hadith on Abdul Razak? SubhanAllah, right? Who is this liar from Naysabur who is telling this hadith from Abdul Razak? Benefit. He didn't wait to figure out who it was. He didn't hedge his bets. He spoke the truth as he knew it. Sometimes somebody might say something to you that's harsh. It might happen. Sometimes a brother might get on your head. It might happen. Somebody might come down on you like in a way that's kind of hard to bear. It might happen. This is Yahya ibn Ma'in, one of the imams of his time. The hadith ended with him and 3 other people during his time. And he bust out, who is this liar from Naysabur telling this hadith from Abdul Razak. SubhanAllah. But look at it. So Abu al-Azhar, he stood up and he said, here I am. I'm the one telling the hadith. Look at the manhood in these people. The strength with your truth. I'm not embarrassed about what I narrated from what I believe to be the truth. I know Yahya bin Ma'in just called a person a liar, but I don't think it's a lie. I think it's the truth. I'm the one who's saying it. I'm not going to hide behind a screen name. I'm not going to hide behind ism musta'ar or a pen name, my username. I'm going to speak the truth as I see it. And so Abu al-Azhar, he said, here I am. I'm the one who said it. فَتَبَسَّمَ Yahya. Look at the love and the balance. Who is this liar from Naysabur saying this hadith from Abdul Razak? Here I am. I'm the one who said it. When Yahya saw who it was, Abu al-Azhar, he said he began to smile. Right? He knew, okay, no, not you. And he said, as far as you, then you're not a liar. And he was astonished by how good of a person he was. Right? Meaning Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, Yahya used to be amazed about how good and how safe of a person he was in his aqidah, in his religion. So he said, as far as you, you're not a liar. The sin must be for somebody else in this hadith. Somebody else must be sinning in this hadith, not you. Meaning somebody above you in the chain must be the one making the sin of transmitting this hadith. It couldn't have been you. You're just telling us what you heard, right? And so these are examples of character. Like when you see a scholar say a general statement about somebody, who's this liar from Naysabur? Do you cut and paste it and tip it and attach it to a clip? Sheikh so-and-so refute Sheikh so-and-so, calls him a liar? No, because he wasn't talking about him directly. He was talking about a general concept. And what lets you know that if he would have known Sheikh so-and-so said it, he would have said about him, well, you're not a liar. Maybe the mistake was in some other reason or for some other purpose. These are all lessons. We're still in the same biography. I know originally we said 50 biographies. It's not going to happen. But in the biographies of what we just did in another class, the biography of Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, they said about him, and I'm trying to remember the exact words, but the gist of it is he was an individual who loved hadith. And nobody was considered a man until he loved hadith. And so this is the test. Do you love learning about these people and hearing about these people? Could you sit all day and just go over their stories? Nobody's considered a man until he loves hadith. Right? You have to be able to engross yourself into these stories. So we'll continue. Abu Ahmad ibn Sharqi, he said, Huwa hadithun batil. This hadith that was reported by Abu al-Azhar on Abdul Razak, on Ma'mar, on al-Zuhri, on Ubaydullah, on Ibn Abbas, on that the Prophet saw Ali and said, you're a master in this life, a master in the next life. Abu Ahmad ibn Sharqi, he said, this hadith is falsehood. وَالسَّبَبُ فِيهِ أَنَّ مَعْمَرْ كَانَ لَهُ ابْنُ أَخٍ رَافِضٍ. And the reason behind this falsehood is that Ma'mar, the teacher of Abdul Razak, had a younger brother, or he had a brother who was a Rafidi. Ma'mar's brother was a Rafidi. وَكَانَ مَعْمَرُ يُمَكِّنُهُ مِنْ كُتُبِهِ. And Ma'mar used to let him use his books. Ma'mar used to give him a position to get in control of his books. Right? Imagine. Like, wallahi, like imagine these situations. Go to your library in your home right now. Alhamdulillah, we enjoy printed books, covers. Now imagine your brother, your friend, your mother, your son, your daughter, la qadar Allah, upon batil. And then going into your library and just writing a word or two in there, fabricating it. And then we understand how great these people were who preserved our religion. If it wasn't for the likes of Yahya ibn Ma'in, that batil might have made it to us. And when you hear that narration, you don't say to yourself, oh, that's terrible hadith. Imam Ali is a leader in this life, a leader in the next life. There's nothing wrong with that. Say it, why not? But they didn't go by the why not about hadith. Either it is or it isn't. And so Ma'mar, he had a brother who used to have access to his books. And so he would enter hadith into Ma'mar's books. And so that's why this hadith was falsehood, even though the chain looks solid. But you'd have to be a scholar of hadith to recognize that. And this is an example of those things that they call those ilal, those subtle weaknesses that on the surface, the hadith looks authentic. But when you have insight into the hadith and this becomes your occupation, these are things that you know. And now, so for the rest of your life, you'll know that this hadith is weak. And when you come across it and you say Ma'mar on Zuhri, on Ubaydillah, on Abdullah, that the Prophet said about Ali when he looked at them, oh no, I know that hadith. Ma'mar's little brother put that into the book. Ma'mar's brother added that to Ma'mar's book. And so from there, whether Abdul Razak got it from the book or Ma'mar became confused at an older age and started narrating without consciousness or without competency from his book, we know what's going on. Naam. They go on to say, قال الخطيب البغدادي قال الخطيب أبو بكر يعني خطيب أبو بكر خطيب البغدادي وقد رواه محمد بن حمدون النيسابوري and محمد بن علي النجار الصنعاني and عبد الرزاق فبرئ أبو الأزهر من عهدتي. This is the point. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, Abu Bakr, he said about this, Muhammad ibn Hamdun and Naysaburi, he also narrated this hadith on the authority of Muhammad ibn Ali and Najjar as-San'ani, who also narrated it on Abdul Razak. And so we see here that the mistake wasn't from Abu al-Azhar. He wasn't the one responsible for the mistake. Because remember, Yahya said about him, as far as you're not a liar. Somebody else had to commit the sin. Somebody else had to fabricate this hadith. I know it couldn't have been you. But I know this hadith is fabricated. And so here we see that the fabrication had to be from somebody, Abdul Razak or higher, because we have other people besides Abu al-Azhar, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, narrating this hadith on Abdul Razak. And so all of this was just in connection to that narration, but it was meant to show us the value of Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim, Abu al-Azhar. He says, وقال ابن عدي أبو الأزهر بصورة أهل الصدق عند الناس. وأما هذا الحديث فعبد الرزاق من أهل الصدق وهو ينسب إلى التشيع فلعله شبه عليه. They say that Ibn Adi is another scholar of hadith, a scholar of people, one of the students of al-Bukhari, and has a good book in hadith and people. Ibn Adi, he says, Abu al-Azhar is the picture of honesty with the people, right? He is the picture of honesty with the people. When you want to see honesty in the dictionary, you look it up, you'll see Abu al-Azhar's picture. And as far as this hadith, then Abdul Razak is also from the people of honesty. Abdul Razak as-San'ani was an imam. We use his book to this day, Musannaf Abdul Razak, right? And other, you find his hadith in all the books. But he was also accused of a little tashayyur, right? He was attributed, it was known about him that he had a little tashayyur with him, right? He had some mistakes in tashayyur. And so maybe because of this hadith was able to be confused upon him. Maybe because of this aspect of tashayyur that he had, this hadith was able to get into his hadith, right? He heard a hadith, he liked it. He had a little bit tashayyur, a little bit of support of Ali, right? Maybe he overlooked or didn't know or gave a good thought about Ma'mar or Ma'mar's brother or something like that until he started narrating this hadith. But that's the benefit of all of this science, how we preserve our religion so well. The Jews can't do this. The Christians can't do this, right? All of this about one person. You never heard his name before. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani' ibn Saliq, ibn Ibrahim, Abu al-Azhar, al-Naysaburi. Imam, subhanallah. Let's finish up. He says, قال أحمد بن سيار مات أبو الأزهر في أول سنة 61 وقال حسين القباني توفي سنة 63. Ahmad ibn Sayyar, he said that Abu al-Azhar, this individual, he died in the beginning of year 61, i.e. 261. And Hussein al-Qubani, he said he died in the year 63. Ibn Hajar, he says, قال Abu Hatim al-Razi, who was another scholar of people, him and his cousin, Abu Zur'a al-Razi, he's the scholars of hadith and people. He said that this individual was Saduq, was honest, reliable. But you got to know that from Abu Hatim, this could be high praise. وقال ابن شاهين في الأفراد ثقة نبيل. And Ibn Shaheen, in his book, The Individuals, or those who have single hadith, said about this individual, he was righteous, reliable, and noble. Nabil. He was noble. وقال أبو الأزهر, this individual, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, he said, I saw Sufyan ibn Uyayna ولم يحدثني. I met Sufyan ibn Uyayna, but he didn't narrate any hadith to me. Subhanallah. Right? So that would have put him at the level of Atba' al-Tabi'in, at the same level, but that was one of the later scholars from the Tabi'in that he got to see, but he didn't get to narrate from. Right? So that's like missing out on a level. Right? I heard from Uthaymeen, but I never met him. When he came to America, I didn't get a chance to see him. Right? Bin Baz died the year I started practicing. Sheikh al-Albani died the year after that. Uthaymeen died the year after that, and I didn't get to meet him when he came to America. Sheikh Muqbil died the year after that, right? Or less than a year between them. And when he came to America, I didn't get to see him. I didn't go to California. So the point is that you missed out on some of the higher scholarship of your time. وَقَدْرُ اللَّهُ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. This is what he's saying. I saw Ibn Uyayna, but he didn't narrate any hadith to me. And so in this, you see there's a prestige in traveling and just simply meeting the scholars. They would take pride in that. I have a sitting with Sheikh Fawzan. I've sat with Sheikh Fawzan. I've sat with Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad. I've sat with Sheikh Rabi. I've sat, right? These are things that an individual can take pride in, not arrogance, but know that he's on the right course of the Salaf, that he was in these circles during these times. His graduation date or his enrollment date corresponds with these other teachers. They say, this is all the statement of Ibn Hajar, he says, وَذَكَرَهُ ابن حبان في الثقات وقال يخطئ. And Ibn Hibban mentioned him in his book, Al-Thiqat, the reliable people, but he said about him, he makes mistakes. And probably he said this because of that hadith that he mentioned from Abdul Razak. Ibn Hajar, he says, وَكَانَ ابن خُزَيْمَةَ إِذَا حَدَّثَ عَنْهُ قَالَ حَدَّثْنَا أَبُو الْأَزْهَرِ مِنْ أَصْلِ كِتَابِهِ. And Ibn Khuzaymah, whenever he would narrate from Abu al-Azhar, he would say, Abu al-Azhar narrated to us from his book. Why would he make that statement from his book? If you go back to the beginning, who was it? Abu Hamid al-Hakim. Abu Hamid Abu Ahmad al-Hakim. He said whatever he narrates from his book, then it's more reliable. Ibn Khuzaymah, he took that to heart, and whenever he would narrate, he would only narrate from him what he narrated out of his book. So this is an example of them implementing that. We'll take one more short biography. And this biography that they mention here is just to distinguish between the individual we just learned about, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani, ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim, and Naysaburi, who died in the year 261 or 263, thiqatun inshallah, or at best thiqatun yukhti, or saduq, al-Abdi, from Bani Abdi Qais, that individual who can be found in Nasa'i as well as Ibn Majah. This individual is just to distinguish so you don't get him confused with somebody else. So there's another Ahmad ibn al-Azhar who isn't in Kutubu Sitta, but he has the same name as the guy we just learned about. And so in this book, they also mention people who aren't in Kutubu Sitta, so you can know about who they are. So they say, for distinction purposes, tamyiz, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar al-Balkhi. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar al-Balkhi, for distinction purposes. From his teachers were Yaqub ibn Ibrahim ibn Sa'd. So he shares the same teacher. So you might think it's the same person, but they're not. Wa Ma'ruf ibn Hassan. From his teachers as well was Ma'ruf ibn Hassan. And from his students were Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Ishaq ibn Khuzaymah. So they share the same student. So you might think they're the same person, but they're not. There's a Ahmad ibn al-Azhar who is similar to the gentleman we just learned about. He has similar teachers and similar students, but they're not the same person. Likewise, from this individual, al-Balkhi, from his students is Ibrahim ibn Nasr al-Anbari and Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Mighlas, or Mughallis. I think it's Mighlas. Let's see very quickly. I know we're going long. We're already at 47. Mughallas, al-Mughallas, with the shadda. I didn't bring my pen. Al-Mughallas. Nah, subhanAllah, sorry. Nah. So also from his students is Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn al-Mughallas. They say about him, ذكره ibn Hibban fi الثقات. Ibn Hibban mentions this person, this other Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn al-Balkhi. He mentions him, Ibn Hibban mentions him in his book, al-Thiqat. Alone. He mentions this individual, Ahmad, by himself, separate from the individual who was before him. So he doesn't mention them as the same person. And he says about this person, كان ينتحل مذهب أهل الرأي يخطئ ويخالف. This individual, al-Balkhi, he used to adopt the view of the people of al-Ra'i. And we talked about madhab ahl al-Ra'i, the Ara'aytiyun, right? Or those people who used to ask those what if questions in fiqh. And some of them attributed to those who used to use opinion in place of hadith, or where hadith should be used. Whatever you call them or whatever you describe them as, this individual, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar al-Balkhi, was attributed to the people of al-Ra'i, the Ahnaf. Some of them just make them the Hanafis in general. And he says about him, Ibn Hibban, he says about him, he used to make mistakes and oppose others, meaning he used to go against what other people said. Even though he was reliable, he would go against what other people said. And they say, وَأَخْرَجَ لَهُ الْحَاكِمْ فِي الْمُسْتَدْرَكِ. This Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, you can find his hadith in the Mustadrak of Imam Ahmad. I'm sorry, of Imam al-Hakim, Abu Abdullah al-Naysaburi. You can find his book, his hadith mentioned in the Mustadrak of al-Hakim. So those are the two people we learned about today. We only were able to get two. Excuse me. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar, ibn Mani, ibn Salit. Excuse me. Ibn Mani, ibn Salit, ibn Ibrahim al-Abdi al-Naysaburi, who died in the year 261 or 263. His hadith, he was thiqa, inshallah. He can be found in Nasa'i as well as Ibn Majah. And as far as the second one, for distinction purposes, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar al-Balkhi, who can be found in the Mustadrak of al-Hakim. They don't mention anything about his death, but he's from the same generation as the previous Ahmad ibn al-Azhar. We'll stop at that amount. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Very quickly, let's see what we got here. Now, وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Naam, alhamdulillah. When Sheikh Falah came to America, we didn't miss that one, alhamdulillah. Nor should you miss any of the Mashaykh when they come to America. When Sheikh Hassan al-Banna used to come to America, when the Mashaykh from Medina used to come to America early on, back in the 90s, right? Alhamdulillah, Allah blessed us to not miss many of those opportunities, right? Sheikh Uthaymeen, he came for medical treatment, and hunaka qissa, right? We have a story about how we missed that sitting with Sheikh Uthaymeen. All the brothers from our city ended up going, and there were some people here who were actually close to him to some extent during that time when he went to Boston. But that's an example of inna min amwalikum wa awlad inna min azwajikum innama azwajikum wa awladukum aduwwun lakum fahdhuruhum. Inna min azwajikum wa awladikum aduwwun lakum fahdhuruhum. Indeed, from your wives and your children, they're enemies to you, so be careful of them. Right? That ayah was sent down about some of the Sahaba who, when they got married, being married stopped them from making hijrah or learning knowledge. And so when they finally did, they saw that their companions had surpassed them. That's our story with Uthaymeen, right? We got married in the fitna of marriage, and when we finally, got out of it, when we woke up the next day, everybody was gone, and we were in the city by ourselves, wondering when everybody went. And of course, they went to Sheikh Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, subhanallah. Nothing made me as sad at that point in my life as missing the opportunity to see and learn from Sheikh Uthaymeen directly. Like, alhamdulillah, I have 2 questions that I asked him over a phone. They were translated for me at that time, so I take pride in that. But I didn't cry when my dad died. I cried when Uthaymeen died, rahimahullah. Rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'ah. Assalamu rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm having trouble following along, remembering all of the names. Do you have any recommendations for me? Write them down. Test yourself. Make games for your friends. Make games for you and your friends, right? Ahmad ibn Ibrahim. Right now, it's easy. Everybody we're learning about is Ahmad. So you got to remember is their last name, right? Ahmad ibn Ibrahim. Ahmad ibn al-Azhar. Just be repetitive in it, right? It becomes tricky. And obviously, with more experience, it becomes easier. And with the Arabic language, it becomes easier. Read a lot of hadith. Right? Give yourself an exercise. Find one of these people in one of the 6 books. You see what I'm saying? Read a hadith from them. Write down Ahmad ibn Ibrahim ibn Khalid al-Mawsili. Right? You already know. Now you got that name down. When did he die? 236. Write that down. Where could you find his hadith? Sunan Abi Dawood. Now go find it. Write the beginning of the hadith. That will help you put that person into perspective. And as you go further and further along, certain things will get easier. Don't try to memorize everybody. Pick one person from each lesson that you'll focus on. Right? I'm not going to memorize. If we do 5 people a day, I'm just going to memorize 1. If we do 2 people a day, I'm just going to memorize 1. If we do 1 person a day, I'm just going to memorize that 1. Figure out what things about that person are relevant. Right? Remember, this book is a cleaning up of another book. Ibn Hajar also cleaned up this book and made it even more simple. Make your own taqrib, right? And then double back and compare what you do to what Ibn Hajar did, right? This person, Ahmad ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Azhar, now you know the summarization about him. If you had to judge him, would he be thiqah? Would he be saduq? Would he be thiqatun yukhti? Would he be saduqun yukhti? Would he be da'if? How would you grade him? Give him your grade. his identifying information, his birth and his death date, if you know it, and then go back to Taqrib al-Taqrib or Taqrib al-Tahdhib and see how Ibn Hajar did it. And now you have a competition that you're doing with yourself. Can I be as good as Ibn Hajar on my own? Can I go and do the same thing Ibn Hajar did? If you ask me to go back, for example, and I know we're outside of the time, so if you need to leave, leave. But let's go to that person, Ahmad ibn al-Azhar. Now, my statement would be thiqah. If I had to guess, I'd say he's thiqah, right? At worst, thiqatun yukhti. But I don't even think he made the mistake because all of those people verified that mistake wasn't his. When I go to Taqrib al-Tahdhib, let's see what Ibn Hajar said about him. He said Ahmad ibn al-Azhar ibn Mani'. So you see he abbreviated his name. He didn't say Ahmad ibn al-Azhar ibn Mani' ibn Salit ibn Ibrahim al-Abdi Abu al-Azhar. He just said Ahmad ibn al-Azhar ibn Mani' Abu al-Azhar al-Abdi al-Naysaburi. Aha. Ibn Hajar says Saduq. So that little bit of criticism that was there about him possibly, I forgot that, him possibly receiving suggestions, we gotta knock him down a notch. We can't put him at the highest levels. He might have received suggestions as he got old. So we got to make him Saduq. Ibn Hajar says in his smaller book, and he used to memorize and then he got older. So he's given his justification of why he knocked him down. And his book became more reliable. He died in 63. So you see how Ibn Hajar, he chose what things he wanted to comment on in his summarization. One of the best ways to preserve knowledge is to summarize it. I got to go because I got to make Maghrib. It says, Assalamu alaikum. Now, those are some of the recommendations. It's scholars that share the same name, but they're not same or on the same level. If they share the same name but aren't on the same level, then they're a little easier to differentiate because you know that they're different levels. So their teachers and their students will be different. But if they share the same name, or they have similar names, whether in writing or in sound, and they're on the same level, then that's when it can become difficult. And that type of person, you call him, if they're not identified, you call him a muhmal, the unidentified, right? The unspecified, like Sufyan or Ahmad, right? You got to figure out which one is which. Ameen. Jazakumullah khair. Wa iyyakum. Ustaz, when is the next Al-Adab al-Mufrad? Inshallah, this weekend, inshallah, with Sheikh Abu Hisham al-Tahiri. With Sheikh Abu Salah al-Tahiri, hafidhahullah. Inshallah, this weekend. It's scheduled for the last sept in every month, but it happens when it happens. One thing about us, we're not on a timeline. These classes are for the sake of translating. The classes with the mashayikh, when they have time, we have time. But our appointment is for next sept, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, wafikum barakallah. Saduq is less than thiqah. I forgot to say, I mean, wa jazakumullah khair ya habibi. Ya akhi, ana fi bali ana attasil bik. I forgot I need to call you. I've been meaning to call you for a minute. I don't know if you're still here or not, but you know who I'm talking to. I need to call you. How you doing? Alhamdulillah, I ain't seen you in a minute. I was thinking about you yesterday. Akhi, I'm dealing with this as well. Your wives are a fitna for every time I was going to study and travel. May Allah make it easy for you. Inshallah, alhamdulillah. We're not putting it off on our wives, but right, inshallah, it can be a cause of hindrance. But one piece of advice I will give is the advice that we got from our Sheikh Abu Salah, since the Sheikh Youth Cup. There was a brother who was there in one of the Dawrat. He was living in Kuwait at that time. And he came to one of the lessons during the Dawrah. And the Sheikh asked him, where you been? I haven't seen you. And he said, I have family, the family's, keeping me pretty busy. He said, how long you going to have a family for? To that extent, right? You're always going to have a family, right? You got to make time to get your studies in. And so that was a benefit we got from the Sheikh regarding that brother's circumstances. So even though they can be a means that can make things difficult, don't let them be your excuse, right? Even if it's something like watching a YouTube video, watch the Sheikh online. Allah's given us too many opportunities nowadays. I got all the durus I need just in this device right here, right? Now, it's not the same, but it's something. So take advantage of something. والله المستعان وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.